And welcome back with another episode of Tales from the Riff. And I'm joined by my good friend Vlad or Vladimir. Take your pick. He is not from Siberia. He's from Serbia. Get it right. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Yeah. How are you doing now?
Oh man, I'm just got up from my sleep and everything's going good, man. I got to see your handsome face finally. You know, got- and I love the dissection shirt, by the way.
Thanks. It's a long sleeve.
Hell yeah,
It's actually
love it.
custom made because I wasn't able to find an officially made Samberling long sleeve. So I ordered for a long sleeve with, of course, the tridents with the 666. And of course, I also have the back. On the back here is the anti-cosmic metal of death, like back print. So I ordered that because I always wanted to have like a long sleeve of the Samberling since it is my favorite album by Dissection. Plus, it feels cool to have it. So you know, it's a must-have.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Um, we share a common friend in Bryce Leclerc
Yeah.
because graciously you had contacted me and say, "Hey, I do a lot of interviews of my own, and Bryce, former bass player of Dissection, he's putting out some new material, and I'm sure he would love to talk to you. So thanks for that interview. That was great, man. And
What can I say? You're welcome. I'm very glad it turned out great. I watched that interview a couple of times, and of course, I'll never pass on the opportunity to tell somebody, hey, you should definitely interview this guy. I've been like suggesting him to at least two or three podcast hosts, like you were, of course, one of them. And I always
Mhm.
said, look, since he's going back, making new music, I thought the world should, listen to from Chaos because when I contacted him, the funny thing was the next morning I received the email containing the files of the of all the songs of that album, and I was like, whoa! I wasn't even aware that the guy was doing new music. And that of course encouraged me to make completely new questions for the interview, and of course it turned out great. It was like it was almost like a 2 hours conversation, and of course we talked about everything from the new music to, of course, we talked about Dissection and his YouTube channel. Never an opportunity to pass. And of course I'm glad to see that everybody is showing genuine interest in that guy because of course he was a part of a very important band. I think Dissection is a very important band in
Oh,
all of its
absolutely. I've heard from friends here locally in Louisiana that they love everything about melodic black metal
yeah.
or melodic death metal, and they were not aware of dissection. I guess because I'm a little older than them, and I've always paid attention to what was out there, in Scandinavia and whatnot, and they know about the Demu burgers of the world. They know about the harder stuff, the older stuff, and one of my good friends who plays in a band here in Lafayette, Louisiana, he's he heard a Buried Underground episode of mine and was like, "Dude, like, who in the fuck is Dissection?" I was like, "You don't know about Dissection?" I was like, "Dude, and you play in a in a melodic black metal band and you don't know Dissection?" He was like, "I mean, th- in my opinion, Dissection is that band that crossed over or blended together all the best elements of melody and black, dark, atmospheric metal."
Indeed.
Um, so yeah, they're one of my favorites. If definitely one of my favorites.
you know
Definitely top 5 band.
Indeed, and when I discovered the band 6 years ago, as somebody who came primarily from a old school thrash and a heavy metal background, I wasn't that much into black metal. I mean, mostly not into second wave black metal. I was into the first wave black metal. Your Celtic Frost, your Hellhammer, Bathory, Sarcophago, and all the bands that you can mention in that wave. But when it comes to the second wave, it took me some time to get into it because it was a bit, too extreme for me at the time for me to understand. But the best things about Dissection is, if you're somebody who genuinely loves new wave of British heavy metal, your Iron Maiden esque
Yeah.
melodies and
Yeah.
stuff like that, of course you're gonna enjoy Dissection. Who isn't gonna enjoy that band?
Exactly. Speaking of thrash, you have this huge laundry list of bands that you have interviewed, and I am totally envious of you for doing that. I mean, like,
Oh,
so,
please don't.
dude, like some of the, I mean, including Bryce, uh, Century, fucking Butcher. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And with Century, dude, like I was just like I was floored when I saw that logo under your belt. As far as bands you had talked to, tell me about how you go about meeting these bands and just talking to them, getting to know their story.
Well, what can I say? When I started interviewing bands, that was around January or February of 2023. So I started out with the local band Terror Hammer. It's a black thrash speed metal band, it's basic and it's simple, but it's effective and it's got that edge to it. And I thought if I should start somewhere, I should start somewhere locally. It's an easy start. And of course,
Exactly.
throughout that whole year, I was basically just exchanging emails with bands saying if you want to do an interview, I can send you the questions, and they send me back after a while. And I've been doing that up until the interview with Saxon. And honestly, I could tell you that it was very interesting to work on these interview questions. But when Saxon came, it was a completely different story because that was the first official live interview that I had to do, and it was like over Zoom. Everybody uses Zoom basically, and I was so nervous because of course I got it around 4 a.m. and of course I was still asleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night. So it's like something told me, dude, wake the fuck up. And I just looked at my messenger, and it was our main editor Tomek, and he told me, check your emails. And I look at the email, I was like, oh my god, what the hell? How did I get here? And it turns out I didn't even pay attention to the press release. They did actually have the contact of their press agent, for those who are interested in interviews, and he was willing to book anyone who wants to interview Biff Byford on behalf of Hellfire and Damnation, the new Saxon album.
Hmm.
And I instantly just messaged him saying, like, if there is an available schedule, please book me. If it's 25 minutes of interviews, like, okay, no problem. And the funniest shit ever, I was so shocked. I basically woke up. My wife's like, honey. She's like, what? It's like, I am going to interview Biff Byford of Saxon. She's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? She couldn't believe it because she thought it was something serious was happening. It was like, well, yeah, it was serious for me, but
Right.
it was so great because for the first time ever, I get to interview somebody live. It could have actually happened way before that with Olof Wikstrand of Enforcer, the Swedish heavy metal band Enforcer.
Oh yeah, another great band.
Yeah, indeed. I was. Oh man, it took me a while until I got that one off the ground because it was constantly being delayed, and I wanted to actually interview the man after the gig, but he was very tired, worn out. He said, we can do the interview tomorrow live at the hotel." I was like, "Yeah, but I don't live in Belgrade." It's like, "Okay, then email me the questions and I'll answer you." And of course, he eventually did after a month. But still, I was very glad that around the time I already had bands like Enforcer and Gravedigger on my list as one of the very prominent acts, and then Saxon came, and it was like I broke the ice. Then I was like, I want to do more live interviews, and it really
Mhm.
is something more special to do it this way than to
Right.
just exchange emails. And it takes time. It takes it's there's constant delay.
100%.
Plus, there are also side questions. You don't even think about them when you're typing the questions, and then you're like,
Exactly.
you think about it like on the flight, and it turns into a very normal conversation. I've had like plenty of them coming up, like Bobby Liebling of Pentagram was one of them. There was also, I can't really recall which ones I really enjoyed, but of course the Lee Payne of the new era British heavy metal band Cloven Hoof. Wow, that was one of the longest, like most detailed conversations that I've ever had. And
I swear to God, you're like in my iPhone playlist because, dude, I was just jamming every band you name: Pentagram, Enforcer, and Cloven Hoof. Maybe that's why we get along so great. I was just jamming the Gates of Guyana the other day.
yeah, oh my, I mean, I mean, what can I say? These are all the bands that I know people enjoy. The bands that they generally enjoy still when they release new music, and of course, it isn't just the sake of interviewing bands for the sake of promoting their new material, but also for me to get some interesting info for the people who want to read more about them. Something that you don't
Yeah.
actually hear people talk about. If it's a personal background, if it's something like I don't know, something generally about the music of the band that they always wanted to know more about. That's the good opportunity for you to be one of those people. You don't ask generic questions, and I've always avoided to ask generic questions. I'm like, I don't want to have a template on which I'm going to
Yes.
base all the remaining interviews I ever do.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's what I think. I'm more the same way. I'm really interested in getting to know the person or the artist myself. And if they have something really like like you said, want to promote, then great. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that process of recording and what was the story behind the recording process of or whatever it they want to talk about. But I've always been really fascinated about some of my favorite musicians, and that and that's what this passion play is about. um, so but and saying that, like to get to know your story, man. I mean, you come from Serbia, you come from a land that I've never visited and I've always been interested in visiting. So what was life like for a young Vlad growing up?
Well, when it comes to music, it started at a very early age. So my parents are both, old old school traditional music lovers. They love everything, or they loved everything from pop music to funk and some rock music here and there, but not that much. But it all changed for me. It all changed when they had like four CDs. It's like some music compilations, and on one of them, I heard this awesome riff. It was so heavy. It was so catchy. It was so like simple to remember. I was like, every time they played those CDs, I waited for that song. That song is "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath.
There you go.
That song changed everything, and of course, I still didn't know about rock music and about heavy metal music, but it was some time afterwards when I got to discover bands. When I started discovering bands like AC/DC, Metallica, The Who, Slayer, Megadeth, Judas Priest, whatnot. The classics of rock and heavy metal music, and then getting into more extreme stuff. Getting more into the extreme metal stuff like Venom, Napalm Death, and Bathory. Discovering about black metal, Norwegian black metal, first wave black metal, and how those two are actually separated. And death metal came in there as well, but I think it was because I watched Ace Ventura, the first movie, and I saw Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah.
I was like, "What the hell is this?" This is new. It's like I was like, I heard Hammer Smash Face, and I was like,
Yeah.
I first thought, is this a thrash metal band? Then I heard the growling vocals. I was like, oh my god, this is death metal. Oh, this is awesome. Who's gonna start from like these cool bands? Like whatever people may think that oh, everybody starts up with those bands. Yeah, but how many people when they discover these bands are truly you know they're like shocked when they come across something like this, because they're like, oh my god, I was never even aware of this, and I wasn't even aware that something like this exists. I was aware of the new metal thing, but that didn't really keep me that long. I mean, I was listening to a little bit of Slipknot and Korn and System of a Down, but only because it was going on TV and I was watching.
Right. It like new metal movement was like just it was so commercialized by MTV and
Yeah.
all that. It was just in your face. You had no choice but to just watch it, and I was just sick of it. That's where I just lost complete interest in everything mainstream. Sorry, go
Exactly.
ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big trend, and of course, until I discovered the thrash metal bands like Dark Angel, Destruction, Sodom, Creator, and Death Angel as well, Exhumer, and whatnot. That's when it really started to make sense for me, like what really metal is capable of. Because new metal seems like it's cool for the kids, but it's cool for not cool for the metalheads. It's not like metal for the metal fans. It's more like metal for the people who come from a different background. Like they say, new metal is metal made by people who grew up listening to hip hop. I was like, makes sense, yeah.
That makes
Uh,
sense, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like it can sound cool at first hand, but of course, that's only because you've never heard anything else aside from that. But
Right.
when I turned off the TV and I just started, researching bands, that's how I got into it. And had it not been for your classic thrash and death metal bands and speed metal bands and whatnot, I probably wouldn't, start meeting other people and start, playing music. I actually started bass after I saw Metallica for the first time in 2012. They were playing at the Ušće Park fest. It was like an open air, big, park where they usually held all the biggest concerts there in Belgrade, and they were, supported by Gojira and Machine Head. Of course, I wasn't there when Gojira was performing, but I instantly, knew like, okay, these guys are also pretty big. And that was the era when Les Enfants Sauvages, that's very contemporary, very important album in their discography, was released.
Mhm.
And Machine had only released Locust back then. I kind of trying to remember, the chronology of all the things that happened back then. But seeing Machine Head live then was awesome because you see all these metalheads, putting their leg on those fences and headbanging like.
Yeah.
This is like what you see at Pantera shows in the 90s,
Oh, yeah.
like the
Yeah.
videos. And then you actually see that as a 13-year-old at a Machine Head show, which will later turn into a Metallica show. It's like, what the hell, man? This is awesome. That's when I was like, you know what? I definitely want to start a band. And the reason why I started bass was because not because there weren't bass players, but because I wanted to play an instrument that I think would suit me best. And I was into Lemmy, Cliff Burton, Cliff Williams, and Jason Newsted, and all the classic bass players of the world that you can think in all of rock and metal music. I mean, Geezer Butler and Steve Harris, of course. Everybody cites those influences, but
And rightfully
Bob
so.
Paisley, yeah, it's all rightfully so, yeah. But when I started learning bass, I didn't go into this saying, "Oh, this is an easy instrument to learn." I mean, yeah, if you don't really try. I mean, of course, it's an easy instrument to learn if you're gonna be a typical bass player playing the root notes. If you're gonna be somebody who wants to play around with the bass, with the bass lines, like I am now, it's not really that easy. You really have to get a good groove, a good feel of it, and that's how it all started. I mean, I joined the first thrash metal band called Detonation in 2013. It was September 2013. I had already rehearsed with my friend Relia, and we both joined the band. I mean, I was actually the one who was invited to the band as a bass player, but I said, yeah, but I already rehearsed with this guy, and I want to take him with me because I don't want to leave him behind. I was like, well,
Right.
we'll see. And then when I saw that this guy's got riffs, this guy's got ideas, they were like, yeah, yeah, it's official. Like we were a five-piece band from that moment on, and we kept it going until 2017, until it wasn't that good anymore around the last year. But hey, on the positive side, we released one EP and one full-length album. So yeah, it was a good run.
How old were you when you started that band? When you joined that band?
When I joined the band, I was 14 turning 15, and Relia, the guitar player, he was 13 turning 14. So we were pretty young.
Yeah.
And when you would see like the two of us, who we were pretty, we weren't that ordinary. Like, you wouldn't think these are just like typical kids, who are just entering puberty. You would think, oh, these guys are already like late puberty kids. They're
Yeah. Yeah.
already like late blooms and stuff. Like, no, we were already like, you know, we were still getting into music, as in discovering bands and, of course, playing music itself. But of course, everybody would think, like, yeah, we're quickly maturing with this, and you don't think like, oh, these are just kids. There were actually people who were surprised, like, oh, this band was actually consisted of kids. These aren't just like teenagers in their late teens. There are actually, a couple of us who were in our early teens, and a couple of them who were in their late teens. It was a very mixed generation, and we had like one guy who was the drummer. He was like close to 30 back then. So yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah, it was very mixed. But generally, we were all that kind of mid to late 90s generation. All the members were, except for that one drummer. And we were also, we got along well, so it wasn't like, oh, there's a huge like mental difference between that age gap you have. We were pretty close. And of course, when things were going bad for the band, that's when we weren't really close. But that's because, you know that's when you mature and things change for all of us. But again, I mean, you know, it was like bad experience that had to happen, because if all goes great, like you can't really break an omelet, like make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So that's the nature of life.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in this band as an early teenager. Obviously, as we get older, our musical tastes get a little bit more extreme, they get a little more open, a little bit, kind of we're more open to hearing some new things that we haven't heard before. What what were some of the albums that made you want to not just follow the root note of the bass playing, but kind of dive more into like maybe harmonizing with the guitarist or just playing around with the drum beat?
I would definitely have to say that, you know Rainbow Rising is one of them, because Bob Daisley, and that's Jimmy Bain, but of course, Bob Daisley on Long Live Rock and Roll also does pretty good stuff as well. I mean, both Jimmy and Bob were very, very good bass players in that band, and they rocked as hell. I mean, listen to Bob Daisley's bass lines on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Like, he's very good at it, and of course, he is also very good on Bark at the Moon. I mean, I love the fact that this guy loves to be like on the beat, and of course, he really has that rock energy. I mean, the guy played with Gary Moore. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're playing with top rock guitarists, of course, you're gonna be a good bass player alongside that guitar player. But aside from Rainbow Rising and of course Long Live Rock and Roll, I would say uh, Black Sabbath, but I would say Master of Reality, simply because I love, playing Children of the Grave, Solitude as well. And I also recall that I really enjoyed playing the Into the Void, the final track.
Oh,
And
that's such a great track.
it's the heaviest track on the album, and it's one of the best tracks, like not just on the album, but also one of the best songs that they've ever made.
I agree with that.
Yeah, a lot of bass players, really did a great job back in the 70s. I mean, you have bands like the very underrated bands like Budgie. It's like a Welsh hard rock, early heavy metal band, and this bass player Burke Shelley, he was like rocking that precision bass with the pick, and he really had that good energy. Like when he was playing the bass, he was like very energetic, and you would just see him, play with such smooth feel to it. It's like, dude, he's rocking the bass like crazy, but it feels like so smooth. It's really hard to do it the way he does. I mean, you have to listen to some of the greatest albums that they made, like In for the Kill and Never Turn Your Back on a Friend, The Bandoliers is also a pretty good album. I'd have to say. Aside from that, Deep Purple and rock. That was also a big one for me. I mean, I love Roger Glover, and he was one of the bass players that also inspired me to pick up bass. And I just love his bass tracks, and I mean, he lays it down so well. I mean, listen to songs like Flight of the Bat and is it Flight of the Bat or is it Flight of the Rat? I'm starting to forget now. And Bloodsucker, yeah, those are awesome songs. Generally, you can't listen to Deep Purple without listening to the bass itself.
Yeah, you really can't. I mean, one of my favorite albums by Deep Purple is obviously Burn.
Oh,
Uh, dude, I love that. I love that album, everything about it. It's just one of those albums that I read into kinda late in my, I'd say my mid-20s or something like that,
yeah.
and it never leaves, my playlist of, Spotify, whatever, or whatever. I have it on, I have it, yeah, I definitely have it on vinyl, that's for sure, and
I
every now and
still
then
have
I
to
just,
get it on vinyl because
oh, dude, it's so good. So
it's
good.
it's a too good of an album not to own on vinyl. I mean, last year I bought this original Yugoslavian pressing of Perfect Strangers,
Oh,
and
nice.
that's probably my favorite album because when I first heard Deep Purple, it was the track "Wasted Sunshine," and it's a very underrated track from that album. It's a very slow, gentle song, but it definitely is a good song to introduce Deep Purple to somebody who's never heard Deep Purple before. But yeah, I am still aiming to hunt down some of their best albums as well because even I have to admit myself, even 2 years back, I went back into listening to Deep Purple because after listening to like extreme metal, a lot of black metal, and a lot of death metal too, that's when I was like, I don't feel it that much anymore. It feels like it's like I feel like I'm a bit, overheated after listening to it. And I was like, I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to the beginning of it all, how it all started for me. And when I heard Deep Purple and Black Sabbath again, that's when I was really, I really thought to myself, yeah, I definitely needed this. And now I'm more, and I see more about all the bands that made me get into rock and roll music. I mean, Deep Purple is still a great band. If you do like the new album Equals One, it is a very, okay, it's a very solid album, but, for a band with members who are around 80 years old, to still have that kind of good rock and roll edge to it, it's a pretty good album indeed. I mean, sure, it's not one of the best albums. It's not nearly as good as Burn and Stormbringer and of course, Machine Head. You
Mhm.
know, those are like one of the best albums that they've ever produced. But when you're when you're older, more mature, that's when you care more about good songwriting. And good songwriting is very important for you to understand like good song structures and good song ideas. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I feel like I've missed throughout the days when I was doing my own black metal project, because I feel like back then I was incorporating a lot of ideas, from a lot of bands that I listened to, because I always wanted to, you know, make it as dynamic as possible. But I wasn't that keen on paying attention to the songwriting itself. That's when I was listening more and more to classic rock stuff. And I was like, yeah, there's a reason why this lasts more than, some of the extreme metal albums. Like, after a while, you can certainly still enjoy them, but listening to these best albums ever made in the 70s, we're not just talking about Deep Purple. I'm also talking about stuff like High Voltage and Dirt Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by
Oh, that's,
ACDC.
man, yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean,
Hands down, some of the best hard rock albums that ever came into existence, in my opinion.
indeed, and I will die on that hill saying that if you don't think ACDC provided some of the best riffs like in hard rock history, you've
You're fucking wrong.
you're wrong. for sure, you're definitely wrong about that one because that band, knew what they were doing. They weren't like you had Kiss as well, and the Kiss was all about making a good show, and of course we all love albums like Love Gun and Destroyer, and
Hotter than hell.
I mean those are also pretty big albums. Although I must say, I myself, for some reason, I've always preferred '80s Kiss more than '70s Kiss. I don't know why. Is it simply because I just like the songwriting better, or is it just because you have like the one of their best drummers playing on that album? Because
Yeah.
I think Eric Carr was their probably best drummer after
Oh,
Peter Criss.
I mean, a lot of people would probably disagree with you. I know one person in particular that would because he's a Peter Criss purist. But yeah, I mean, it feels like it's apples to oranges with those two guys, man. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to agree.
But yeah, like you, I definitely found myself going backward too. Like, there's a lot of people because of the podcast will contact me and and they'll ask me, "Are you into newer black metal that's coming out?" And there's some bands that I really do appreciate what they're doing, but they're namely coming out of Norway, and because they kind of just stay true to what's been the secret formula out there. And but there are some other countries putting out some really good shit. I've always stayed to the tried and true stuff, like the second wave, the Dark Thrones and the Mayhem and whatnot. but uh but like you, as of recently, I've kind of been going back and just seeing what bands had influenced them and made them write whatever riffs. And I found myself playing a lot of Wishbone Ash, a
Oh,
70s folk group, dude. And I was telling one of my good friends, I was like, dude, if you listen closely to Lady J and the track Persephone by Wishbone Ash, you could hear with the right set of ears, you could hear the what went into Caravan of Broken Ghost or Quintessence or whatever track that Dark Throne was inspired to put together those riffs, man.
yeah. There's also that one song from probably my favorite of the recent Dark Throne albums, Old Star. That song, it's not. I forget what it's the song that goes da 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 da.
Oh, Hardship of the Scots.
Hardship of the Scots. The funniest thing was when I heard that riff for the first time, it was like, yeah, that's a good riff. That's a good heavy metal riff. And then, of course, after a while, I was like, let me put my love into you, babe, by ACDC. That's the riff. I was like, holy shit. And I remember actually that Nocturno Culto mentioned in one of his intros that he was listening to a lot of ACDC. I was like, how did I not notice that? Like right away, it's the song "Let Me Put My Love Into You, Babe" from Back in Black
Uh-huh.
in black metal form, or should I say, black and heavy metal form?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's I mean, dude, like and I think that's what really pulls me to Dark Throne like again and again and again. Like there's some people that they'll hear their latest offerings like from either Astral Fortress or their latest one, uh and they're like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I was like, maybe you're not understanding what they wanted to do, which is fucking artistic freedom. They don't give a shit.
Yeah,
And and if it's paying homage to like all of these riff writers that came before them and just like kind of blending their style with theirs, dude, like you're not gonna get another fucking Under a Funeral Moon. You're not gonna get another Transylvania Hunger, with every release that they do. And that's okay. If you want more of that, go listen to that album.
yeah.
You know?
I mean, they themselves express that they don't want to, do the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, just if you look at the if you look at the whole history of bands such as Darkthrone, you have like the early days when they were playing death metal. You have Tulkandra, and then you have, you know, all the
Soul Side.
albums leading up to Soulside Journey.
Yeah.
Yes, and Soulside Journey is one of the best death metal albums.
Oh,
Very dark, atmospheric, and it is actually, I think, if you look at that album, like comparatively from a music standpoint, from all the other albums that they put out in the 90s, that is actually their best album. But everybody still prefers the Unholy Trilogy albums because
right.
that's what put Dark Throne on a map, and they made them more influential that way. I mean, I myself really love those albums, but I got a bit fed up with A Blaze in the Northern Sky and Under a Funeral Moon, and of course Transylvanian Hunger. And that's why my favorite 90s black metal album of Dark Throne is actually Panzerfaust.
Oh,
And
fuck
I
yeah.
and I recently revisited that album. I was like, yeah, this one's still the best.
It
I love
really
the
is.
Celtic frost riffs, man. That's what
Dude,
I
yes.
can't miss about it.
It's like, we had this conversation beforehand, and for me, it's Panzerfaust and Sardonic Wrath.
Oh,
Because
okay.
because Sardonic Wrath, it's like they took that insanity that went into Panzerfaust and just, like, combined Celtic Frost riffs along with Motorhead riffs.
Oh, that's
Eh,
actually good. That's actually a good comparison that you're making there. Um, if I forget, did Sardonic Wrath come out 20 years ago or 21 years? That's
like
the
2006, 2004, maybe, I'm thinking.
2004, because 2006 would have been already that era when they were incorporating the punk elements.
Correct. Yeah.
Because trying to refresh my database. Yeah, Sardonic Red. I actually think I have the patch on my vest. Is the one with the angels striking down from the heavens, isn't it?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Some of
Oh,
the best fucking artwork ever, man.
yeah. Oh my god. And I love the song. Uh, I forget. It's Hakmat Jesu Christ, which is of
Oh,
course
yeah, Checkmate Jesus Christ.
Christ. Yeah, I love that one. And of course, I forget what the hell's the name of that song. The Syndicate needs to be something. That's the one that has that awesome, very doomy riff. Da-da-dun, dun, 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 da-da-da. Oh my god, that riff! I remember playing it over and over again. It's the
Dude,
I
and like that
check it out. It's
that
also from
that, the there's, straightening the ending riffs of Straightening Sharks in Heaven.
yeah.
Or holy shit, dude! It is the coldest fucking riff I think they ever wrote. I mean, it's just such a beast of a riff. That and the whole song of fucking "Hate Is the Law," dude. I get goosebumps every time I listen to it. Like I will be just driving, and I notice that like that the riffs come in, they kick in, and speed limit's probably 35 miles per hour. I'm not sure how that translates in kilometers,
Mhm.
but I mean, I put the pedal to the metal if
Yeah,
a little faster, a little harder. Uh, yeah, but I can go on about Dark Throne, man. But I
definitely.
get off base. I want to hear about your involvement with with Metal Bite and all. How did you get started with that?
Yeah, sure. Well, it was around 2022 when I started doing like it wasn't really out of necessity, but I think it was simply because I was interested. I am, regularly updating the metal archives, and I was like interested to do reviews on albums as well. Some of the albums that I like or dislike, simply because I wanted to, be more frequent there, be more active, and. I remember after I reviewed the latest Destroyer 666 album, Never Surrender, I got an email from Tomek of Metalbite, who's the main editor, and he asked me if I wanted to join as one of their writers to do reviews, band interviews, new single announcements, and whatnot. And at first I wasn't sure, if this was genuine or not. I thought this is another joke because beforehand I had so many people saying, "Oh, we want to do an interview with your band. Pay $50 and we'll ask questions about the band and the equipment that you use." And like, sure, whatever. And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know, you don't know how to respond to such things. That's why I asked instantly, like, okay, could you tell me a little bit more about this? And he showed me the website, and he sent me, of course, the link to the website, and I looked up to it, and this is like, yeah, this okay, this is real. This isn't something like made up name. And when I joined in, I already told him, like, you can have some of my previous reviews if you want to, man. I'm willing to join. And of
Hmm.
course, back then I wasn't sure, how writing reviews should be like. The structure. It wasn't like introduction and then summary of the album itself and then the final impression underneath. There weren't as many detailed reviews back then, so it took a while until I got there. And even it got to the point where when I started receiving some interesting press releases, I was already, looking up at the press releases that would interest me, and I always picked up the ones that when I heard something, I knew I could write something about it. I wasn't choosing anything I got because, like everything that I would get in my mail, I would always listen to all of them. It's like, no, I would only listen to the first couple of tracks and see if there's something that I could say about the album itself. If it doesn't pull you in instantly, if there's something that's like missing from the get go, then I shouldn't force it. And I was like, I'm
Right.
gonna review something that I think is more up my alley. And that's where it comes all to the story of me doing reviews of all the albums, of all the upcoming albums. And you know when I reviewed something like when you get to the point of reviewing some albums of big bands or like very prominent acts in metal,
Mhm.
whether they're major acts or like middle ground or underground, whatever, that's when it really gets interesting. And of course, you don't pass on it.
Oh no.
It's like one of the times when I was very, very positive about reviewing albums was when I saw I think Thulkandra, the German melodic black death metal band of Stefan from Obscura. I think he posted the review of that album, and and at some point later, I saw the review of Torke's latest album as well, which I wrote for Metal Bite, and he posted it as well. The Facebook page posted. I was like, oh, I get it now, and it's such a rewarding feel, even if you're not paid for the reviews that you write. It's a rewarding feel when you do it because when you see bands appreciating the words that you put on, those sentences, they can really tell if it's genuine. And back then, honestly, I wasn't even aware of people doing fake chat gpt generated reviews. And you have all of these, like, a plethora of all of these fake reviews coming in. And that's the point when I was like, yeah, I can see that there's a lot going on right now with bands, you know bands having to deal with this stuff that didn't even think they would have to encounter in their life.
Right.
And when I wrote like my reviews, I said I wanted to be as human and as genuine as possible. I didn't want any sort of like you know bootlicking words or something like I don't really know what to write about this album itself, so that's when I'll ask ChatGPT, like, tell me about the album itself, and it gives a very fake summary, and people can tell it's fake. And
Yeah.
I was so against that. I mean, the funny thing is, there's a lot of them going on. I mean, those are usually small, blogs and whatnot. You don't really see that happening with these genuine zines and fanzines, and of course uh, any sort of website that reviews and interviews bands. They all work with press releases, and they don't want to, the proper treatment that you have to give to bands is like the least you can do is say what you think about the album. At least write it in your own words.
Right.
And in your own words means more than asking some AI to write a summary of the album. Whether if it doesn't say if it's good or bad. Maybe it will, but only if you tell them to give me an album review on this with criticism on this and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but why would you do that? You shouldn't really do reviews. You shouldn't
It's
really
just
do
it's
interviews.
just a lazy cop out to do so, you know?
And there's a lot of people doing that at the moment, and
That's sad.
it's crazy. But of course, when I've I think up until October or November of 2024, that's when I've been doing that a lot. And I remember feeling so burned out. The biggest problem was, even when you had albums that I can genuinely enjoy, I didn't feel that creative juice of writing anymore. That was what really, put me so down. I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm up to it anymore. And the problem was because I was very stressed out at work. I was playing with my band, and I've also started learning Swedish. And when you have so many things happening at all at once, you can't really commit your time for everything.
Oh, I get it.
It's difficult. I'm not a guy who who can always recharge his batteries. Sometimes I gotta, you know, take some time off for myself, for my wife, for my friends, for my family. And I was very, very sad that I couldn't keep it up. And when I left officially, when I announced that I'll be leaving on December 31st, I remember feeling a bit down that whole day because it wasn't something that would end in just after 2 years of doing all these amazing band interviews. Because back then, I really wanted to do it more, do more of that, but I
Yeah.
realized that I can't really do it that much because, you know, I really wanted to leave the future of that, you know, the future of interviewing bands and reviews in good hands of other writers who were up and coming, because we always have new writers coming in metal by. And if I can't commit, somebody else should. And I don't, I don't think, I don't think we should all slow down each other on that part, because I think just because I stopped doing that for the sake of myself, that doesn't mean nobody else should do it. That's why I always when there are people starting to do interviews and whatnot, I always send them my portfolio and tell them this is the bands I've interviewed. Simply because I think there was it was more than just experience that I've acquired. There was something, you know, it wasn't just experience, it wasn't just knowledge, but I would say it was also, you know, a good connection.
Yeah, let's
Different
say, like, you
things.
you establish a good connection, and I know for me personally, people who I get to, do, like, face-to-face interviews over the internet or even in my house, you make these bonds over music. You find some commonality, you find that connection, you find friendship in some cases, most cases, yeah, that I've interviewed guys, I mean, or whoever, and, it makes for a lasting friendship, dude, because, like, a lot of us have gone through the same shit in our childhoods, our, in teen years, whatever.
Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised when I posted that post of me, saying what it meant to me. That whole that one big picture with all the band logos of all the bands that I've interviewed. The best part about was seeing some of the musicians that I've interviewed respond to that, saying salute to you and thank you and something like that. That's like, it's such a grand payoff, because you realize you've done something good for them as well, not just for yourself. You did something so good for them, and all the people that enjoyed reading them, I could really tell that they enjoyed them. They weren't like, you know I mean, you have a lot of people who will, just pat you on the shoulder but not really be sincere about what they think about what you do. But there were a lot of people who read my work and they said, you know, why they enjoyed it. It's not like what they enjoyed the most and what they didn't enjoy that much. There were pretty short interviews as well, but those are just the classics. Sending back and forth with emails.
Right.
But the very detailed ones were the ones that the people enjoyed the most, and simply because when they read the questions, read the answers, they somehow manage to experience the music from a different perspective. And it's not just for me, it's for everyone. Everybody says, like, when they listen to the music itself, that's when they see, those words that they cemented. They see what they actually meant. What the music is all about. Music really does get enhanced a lot when you know a bit more behind the making of it. And there's a lot of bands who
I agree with
don't
that.
really say about much about their music, but they will open up to someone who is genuinely interested in their music. That's why I always say, if you're somebody who is interviewing a band, whether it's a podcast or a magazine, always approach it from a standpoint of somebody who's interested. There has to be interest. And
Right.
then on, there's
I
so many things you can talk about.
wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just would ask ChatGPT, to generate questions that they would like. Don't do interviews then. Don't do reviews then. In any case, yeah, it's okay to use for to use AI for assistance. Is It's always good. You can have some sort of assistance, but still, don't let that be a defining factor of your work. Don't let that be like all of your work.
Right.
That's not a good way to start it off. I've seen a couple of people do that, and I've always told them, like, this is how I do it. And they're like, yeah, but I do it out of hobby. And I'm like, yeah, but I also do it out of hobby. And, I didn't get paid and I don't care. And honestly, I think people really don't take themselves and their work seriously when they take that sort of approach.
Yeah, I we live in this age of the of the influencer,
Yeah.
there's some people, and I'm sure that you probably you have seen it before,
Yeah.
where with the chat AI bots, it's like they're just generating all these questions, just to get content rolling for them,
Yeah.
and just put the spotlight on them, making like all kind of posts to put the spotlight on who they are or what they bring, and not and just using the band or maybe the band's image to just get across to make themselves more appealing and more interesting. We see a lot of that, and I made a point. I've I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, where like like there was no fucking social media. There was only the magazines and the stuff that you would read about or see on TV. And if you were lucky for all these underground extreme metal bands. So I made it a very point, like I did not get into this for likes, follows, subscribers, any of that shit. Like I got into it because I genuinely wanted to archive local bands like you. I started out, with because there was a local guy here. He passed away, and he was all about that. He owned a record store, and I mean, dude, he championed like underground bands locally, nationally. He was responsible for like a lot of like groups coming play. We spoke about the new metal movement, and Dave Hubble, who I'm talking about, people in the Lafayette area know who I am talking about. But Dave, like, he was the guy who got shit rolling. Like, he put like he had corn play in Lafayette, the small town of ours, like before they broke, huge and all that shit. And I remember the guys from down would probably be pissed off, but he had some some like advanced copies of the demo that was completely unlicensed, and he gave one to me. Like I
Oh,
had like I had Down One and Down Two on CD before anyone did. So it was, it like that's kind of like what I'm paying homage to, is like the guys who came before me and started doing that shit.
yeah,
I love, like anyone who could shine a light on an artist or a group that's going against the grain and doesn't have a whole lot of, popularity or whatever, and something that I really dig into, dude. I'm gonna spread that with whatever following I do have, and just as it's mainly supporting them, and supporting the guys that inspire me, and playing,
yeah.
so that's
Plus, it's always interesting when you have people talk about, when they discovered bands either through television or magazines. They probably heard a band from a word of mouth, and they went to a local store and they bought the magazine, the latest issue, which features the band, and they see, oh, that album's coming out next week, we gotta be there when this album arrives. And when you hear stories like that, and you hear stories about people discovering bands like Cradle of Filth through MTV, I mean, that must have been like late 90s, early 2000s. They didn't really release anything. They maybe just had like live shows on that. But of course you had Dimmu Borgir, and then you had like Dissection, and of course you also had bands like Hikati and Throne from Wales, and Ancient from Norway as well. Even I
yeah,
even spoke to Lord Caiaphas about
yeah. I saw that and I was like, holy shit, man! Like,
the funniest
hasn't
thing.
who haven't you talked to?
Yeah, that was actually the last official live interview I've done. I wanted to talk about that music video. Yes, it is bad. It is probably one of the worst music videos ever made, but I don't care. I cannot listen to Lilith's Embrace without that music video playing in my head.
Yeah, without the images going.
Yeah, exactly. You know the part of the song, I mean, in the music video, because you listen to the song itself, you're like, ah, that's the part in the music video. And when you discover stuff like that, you know, when I heard like people talking about discovering bands through fanzines and whatnot, and like compilations as well, it really feels so magic and feels more organic, and it feels also very, it feels so different from what you get nowadays.
Mm.
Nowadays, for example, I still buy CDs and vinyls, but you don't really have like a store where you can go and buy a latest copy of a magazine. You had like that maybe 10 years ago, but then it all died out because
Oh yeah,
you have like,
yeah. Like the magazine industry is just like, it's all going digital now.
yeah. And I mean, I'm glad that some of them are still still keeping it up. They still do good articles, but still, you know, it's not as cool as browsing through pages of browsing through pages of articles digitally isn't as good as buying that, and going through the words while looking at the images themselves and looking at all the cool prints that they put in there. A very cool backdrop for the page itself. I still actually have a couple of the very very old early magazines that were printed out, and one of them, I have a friend who showed me one of the magazines that we had. I'm not sure, was it Nocturne or another one, but it also had like announcer for the new Black Sabbath album, which was 13 at the time. And
Yeah,
of course they were supposed to come and play here, but unfortunately, since Tony Iommi was under going to under surgery, and it was like because of chemotherapy and stuff like that, only Ozzy then decided to do it as his own tour, and he
yeah,
did play there. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend because my parents wouldn't let me go. They didn't have the money to finance that one. They already paid shit ton for me to see Metallica. But still, whatever. Still, like that doesn't like that whole part about seeing all the cool shit on the pages of the fanzines of all the magazines, that cannot be replaced by
No, no.
going through a website and it's already there. I'm like, yeah, but like, come on, dude. It's I don't know. Is it cool to have a book on Amazon or to buy a book in a bookstore and bring it
Right,
home and
right.
actually have as well as for comics and graphic novels, which I do actually own some of them. And, looking at the actual art in the page itself beats having that PDF on your laptop, wherever you have it. It just
Yeah.
doesn't come
It doesn't,
close
yeah,
to
it
it.
doesn't come close to having that physical copy where you could just, like, relish in that,
Yeah.
you know? I get it. I wanna ask you, while it's fresh in my mind, is, we talked about your interview with Saxon, and that was a very proud moment for you. What was the moment, aside from Saxon, that just, eh, you landed a band or a band fell in your lap and you're like, "Oh shit, I gotta fucking, bring my A game and ask some very thought-provoking questions."
Well, aside from that one, I would say Bobby of Pentagram was also one of them, but
Mhm.
only because I watched the documentary Last Days Here, which was about his drug addiction and everything and how
Yeah,
he recovered, and this kind of amplified my will to get more of the guy and also talk about the new music they're working on. And of course their next album is coming out in a week, so I'm very excited for that one too. um, what else? I think the one with Clovenhoof, Lee Payne of Clovenhoof was also a pretty good one as well. Of course, Bryce of formerly Dissection was also one of them as well. Um, I'm trying to, I'm really trying to kind of go back. Oh, I might say. Well, Lord Caiaphas definitely, talking with him about Ancient was, you know, it's a no-brainer. The funny thing that was not only was it that the last live interview, but that was also the first interview with some bigger musician, for which I did not prepare any questions. It all came out of the head. And the funny thing
wow.
was, it's like all the questions that I had prepared were already in there. I didn't type it on my phone. I didn't read it off my phone simply because every interview I've ever done, I always look at the question and I'm like, okay, I know which question I'm about to ask now. Um, I don't know. I really got to remind myself what the hell did I even do? Because 70 interviews in
That's a
2
lot,
years,
man.
it's a lot. It definitely is a lot. Um, but anyways, I would definitely say that the one with Bryce was definitely, as a
Oh, yeah.
longtime dissection fan, would I ever, if I told myself 6 years ago, hey, you're gonna interview the former bass player of dissection who played on Re and Chaos, what would you say? You know, as that former younger self from 6 years ago, you would probably be like, nah, you wouldn't
I
believe it.
I dude, look, I have the same experiences, with Bryce, recently, and, and the fact, I get to hang out with some of the guys that I grew up listening to on the local level, and they're nationally recognized artists. Like, I have to pinch myself, like, is this is really happening? Like,
Yeah,
I'm getting invited to go, to Phil Anselmo's house at Halloween with Tommy Buckley and his wife, from Crowbar. I'm
jeez.
like, "Dude, are you fucking kidding me right now?" Like, and yeah, it's just wild, dude. It's just some wild shit.
Yeah, and the fact that you even interviewed Acid when they reunited, it was like, you were one of the first of all the people that interviewed the band when they got back together, and of course that was pretty big news for everybody
Yeah.
around the world. Everybody was actually um, the funny thing was somebody actually asked me if I wanted to interview Acid Bath myself, and I was like, yeah, but I'm currently exiting and I already have some interviews scheduled, so I can't really, you know, I wish I did, but I think, for somebody who's a big fan such as yourself, I think somebody such as yourself deserved it. And, I
Well, I
think
really
I could have,
appreciate that.
yeah, I think I could have done it myself, but I still think, you know, the interview should be in hands of a fan, not just in the hands of somebody who's a spectator or somebody who's aware of the band, aware of their music, and just like, you know, knows
Oh
what the
yeah,
band's good and what the band is good for and what they're, why they're so popular and stuff like that.
yeah. And I tell you, I cannot take full credit for letting that interview because it was actually Sammy's idea. Sammy's he's a huge big part of my life these days. He's just what started out as a direct message through Instagram, which just flourished into this great friendship that we have. And he was like, "Dude," he's like, "Look, I haven't done any press whatsoever for the whole Asabat, and I want you to do it." And I was like, "What?"
Whoa.
I was like, "Dude, okay, I'm gonna hold you to that." And sure enough, man, they invited me to the first rehearsal, and we got it done shortly afterwards, and it was wild, man. Like I like every now and then, uh, I'll check like the stats on either the downloads or the YouTube views. I'm like, dude, I this is just nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen like 15,000, if it's not like more than 15,000 views at this point. Really, that was like, I think one of the, like, when I look back at your catalog, that was the one that, like, it was even above the one with Boris of
Yeah,
Topalov.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I thought, yeah, again, another artist that we both interviewed, Boris. I love that dude. He's so helpful, man. Whenever I got some technical questions involved and stuff like that, he's such a giant personality, literally and figuratively,
Yeah.
and 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 I was like, oh my, I was like, Jesus, like when I uploaded his interview, I was like, dude, we had like 200 views on the first night, and then the following couple of days, it was like, 1,000, and I was like, "Dude, like, this is wild." Like, I never would imagine. And then, like, the Asabat interview came about, and I was like, "This is stupid."
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing about Boris is that I wouldn't have ever imagined that he would go so big. I remember when he uploaded his vlogs for the first time ever, traveling to all the places in Oslo and Bergen, and of course, he was also in Kolbotn,
Yeah.
the birthplace of Dark Throne, and of
Yeah.
course, all the vlogs regarding Norwegian black metal history, the historic places. There were people who showcased some of these places, but not all at once. I mean, there's also that cool that museum that they made, in honor, like, not the museum, but like that one
Oh, that
place.
exhibit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad Vibes. Yeah, I actually got to see that in person.
Oh, you
Uh,
did? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, I forgot that you attended Inferno Festival. Was it?
yep, yep,
Oh, yeah, I love the story about it.
and it was great, man. I got personally invited by Yannicke Weiss Hansen, who did all my tattoos on my right arm, and she did all the artwork for the Bursum albums and Enslaved album logos and whatnot. And I mean, she's black metal royalty in herself, and it was just wild to see like
Yeah,
all that history under one building. And they had the original Helvet door from the shop, and they just had every like Norwegian band showcased from the early days, and they even had basically a like to scale room layout of Euronymous desk
Oh,
and his typewriter and how, he corresponded with people all over the map, and, it was great, dude. It was a real surreal experience.
I hope they had also the I forgot what his office looked like, but I remember there was a picture of there was also the big map that he had on the
Yes,
back, but also the picture of one
yes.
of the I forgot which it was one of the communist leaders, if I remember, but I can't recall the exact detail, but I know the photograph of his office and him drinking Coca Cola, and I have it all here, and I just
Yeah, yeah.
recall what it looked like. But it's cool. I mean, I hope they did that everything by detail. I mean, it's so bizarre to see that. Those bands burned churches, yet their history is like the black metal history is being preserved locally in museums and whatnot. It's like they're not going to burn Nesiblo records, of course, which was Calvet the former. They're not going to burn out all these places which are the points of where you see a lot of black metal people coming, Norwegian and of course from all around the world, and it really does bring people together.
It really does.
Unfortunately, I've never been to Norway, but I wish I could go there as well. I mean, I was in Stockholm last year, and that was actually my honeymoon, or should I say, my wife and I went there as
Yeah, I just got married last year?
yeah, that was the
Oh,
first time. Yeah, we got married last year.
congratulations, man.
No, thank you.
I thought it was, like, years that y'all been married. Wow.
No, that was last. No, trust me, that was last year. And the funniest thing was uh, we were married on my father's 59th birthday. That was the only date we could get the wedding arranged. That was probably his best birthday gift ever.
Look at that.
Yeah, imagine, like, he probably wouldn't have imagined that I would ever want to get married.
Really?
Or, no, I wouldn't say never imagined, but probably never imagined so early because. As people change over time, you see a lot less people around my age or even older getting married, simply
Uh-huh.
because I don't know, it's because people become so bitter with
Yeah,
age, so
yeah,
cold and distanced. uh, there's a lot less people, having good relationships. And it
yeah.
wouldn't be here if it wasn't because we had a good relationship. We've been together since 2016. We're gonna, in just a couple of days. It's like in a week. It will be 9 years since my wife and I got together as a relationship. But of course,
Mhm, mhm.
8 years, 8.5 years of a relationship leads to marriage. It's no biggie. We
Or hard drugs.
I mean, nothing, nothing is being, kept under the rug. There are no skeletons in the closet. And the
Yeah,
funny thing is, I feel bad for the people who are not able to have a stable relationship. And for a lot of people who know us personally, we represented for them. I'm not doing this, to pump my ego, but a lot of people told me that they see us as some sort of role models. And I said, I'm very glad to hear that, but I'm also very sorry to hear that, because I know they're saying that because they don't really see people getting along together. You
yeah,
know, Forming a relationship nowadays is as difficult as finding a first job experience. It really is, like, for some reason it's so impossible these days. And I wish things would change, for the better, but that's like one of the things I wish before New Year's Eve. I said I wish for the world to heal. That's all I want. I don't want any more, things just for myself. I want all the world to be in a, like, every word in every word, I think any part of the world should be in a better place. And when it comes to our wedding, we really wouldn't, like, we really wouldn't expect it would be that big. We all thought, yeah, it was going to be just a nice, good wedding, and people were going to enjoy festivities and stuff like that. But we also had, like, the first dance, and of course we were like doing the typical Serbian dances. Are, if you have ever seen a Serbian party, you would see people dancing in circles and going around in circles, and it's all a typical, whatnot. People really had such a good time that the day after, when we picked up some of the rest of our stuff, people said nobody remembers a good wedding in all of their lives from working there. And
Yeah. I I'm on my phone right now. I'm trying to look for your wedding photo to show the audience that's gonna watch this, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful couple right here,
oh,
ladies
thank you
and
so
gentlemen.
much.
And, let's see. Uh, I don't know how far down I gotta go, but here you are. Here he is. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's 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 the stuff that dreams are made of right there.
Ah, thank you so much.
Congrats to you, my friend.
Thank you. Uh, I mean, so many things last year. There were pretty big things. Like I said in one of the posts that I put, like when it comes to what happened last year. So many life changing experiences. Like my wife started working at kindergarten, and we traveled to Stockholm, and we were thinking about going to Stockholm for years now, because we both love a lot of things when it comes to Sweden, from music to food to cinematography, people themselves, the cities. And the funniest thing, when we came to Stockholm last summer, the one thing shocked both of us was how fresh and breathable the air is. I was like, my God, there are no graffitis on the wall. The people aren't shouting. They're pretty quiet, and they're not, noisy. They're not really interrupting your privacy. I mean, there are, of course, junkies on the streets. Still, you can see homeless people interrupting your privacy. But I'm
Yeah.
talking about, people like passing by. They don't interrupt you. And the best thing was, like, it all felt so close. For the capital city of Sweden, it's a very walkable city. It's like I can go from where we were. It was like close to a stadium. That's where the hotel was. We could go from there to the old city in just a half an hour. I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't believe this. I don't even have to take a metro. I mean, I can, but I would be, ridding myself of a good, refreshing walk. And the best part about, I hope I'm not being, boring about the story regarding Stockholm, but I just wanted to
No,
share.
man, not at all. I totally understand, like, entering a city you're not, used to, visiting. I mean, I totally understand that. I l my first experiences going abroad, uh, Copenhagen, Oslo, and Braga, Portugal. I mean, that all happened within, like, the same, within a 2-year time frame.
Mm.
And it's, dude, like you, I had this very similar experience. Like, man, I could walk everywhere. Um, everything just felt like I felt a big part of me what felt like I was at home,
Yeah,
you know?
that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up as well. Everything felt like I was at home. Anywhere I was, it all felt very cozy. I mean, the funny thing was, it was the second day in Stockholm. We went out to buy some stuff for ourselves, and I remember buying some vinyls in this cool place called Sound Pollution. And remember, the best thing was the cashier was looking at all the vinyls. Is like, Swedish, Swedish, also Swedish, Swedish. And it's like, well, you can't come to Stockholm and not buy Swedish heavy metal stuff. Swedish heavy metal vinyls.
Absolutely.
And
You got to.
I mean, those are the kind of stuff that I can't really buy here. I mean, the worst things about Serbia is when you have, like, people selling these cool vinyls, talking basic stuff like Bathory and not I don't know, Dark Funeral and Dark Throne. Those are sold not by some sort of music stores, but by people who bought it for themselves, and they're selling for higher prices, which is criminal, of course. Uh, so you don't really have something like that to buy here. You buy there, of course, and for a better price. And then afterwards, I remember we went to this cool restaurant. We booked like the month. No, it wasn't the month before, but we booked it for that same evening. We went there and we saw a friend who we have officially met her for the first time 2 years ago, back when we saw Ghost performing in Budapest, and we remember, having that small encounter. We didn't really exchange any words back then, but we became very close friends. And the first thing after entering that place is called Garlic and Shots. It's one of these cool restaurants that one of the owners of that restaurant, or I don't know, is he a manager or an owner? But Mappe Björkman of Candlemass, the rhythm guitarist, he owns the place. He's one of the main guys there. And
Oh
when we
wow.
went there, who's the bartender? Chuck Moll, the guitar player in Dark Fury. And I was like, uh, dude, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah,
He
no
said, yeah, I
shit.
work here. It's like, yeah, I work here. I was like, wow, this is so weird because, not because it goes against my imagination, but simply because I was so, surprised that, this is it. When you have a famous uh, foreign musician having a normal day of life, it really made like it really struck me. It was like, this is it. This is something that I've always told myself. Everybody has a good normal day lives there. And I remember
Yeah.
like one of the evenings after, I remember also that the vocalist Andreas, or Heljar Mother, or however you pronounce his name, the vocalist of Dark Funeral, was also there. And there was also Johan Soderberg, the guitarist of Amon Amarth. He was also there. And I remember thinking to myself, is it not weird to see all these guys, like, just like occasionally, going to this place and enjoying it like good old school rockers and having a good time. It's a beautiful place. It really feels like home, and it feels like heaven. Plus, you have such good beer, such good food. You got like very good barbecue. You have like these cool burgers with garlic, and of course it's called garlic and shots because you have everything from garlic to shots. You have like very cool garlic infused ice cream as well. You have this.
Oh wow.
You have to hear this. So this is like a traditional. I think it's like a traditional vanilla ice cream, but it has a bit of that garlic aroma to it. I remember,
Mhm.
like, you can taste it, but it's not so strong to the point like where you
It's
know
overpowering,
yeah, it's
basically.
overpowering the sweetness. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was so good actually. That, and of course banana split. And I was like, my God, they somehow managed to to make sweet food with a garlic aroma, and it actually isn't bad. It's pretty good, and of course the beer itself is good. It's probably one of the best beers you can buy there. I remember, I forgot which beer was it. It's not called Phoenix. Not sure if it's called Eagle, but it was something about a bird. But it's like one of their like very popular beers there, and
Mhm.
it's pretty sweet. Like, it's not sweet to the point it's like sugary sweet, but it's like sweet to the point where you really feel good when you drink it. It's a good hard rockers place, and there are also quiz nights and whatnot. Sometimes you would see people like I don't know, the guitarist of the Helicopters just coming by there, and he's all dressed up like a hermit. And I remember seeing him there. I was like, man, this is so weird, but it's
Yeah.
good. I didn't really want to disturb anybody there because somehow I adapt to the mentality of the people. Nobody really has that sort of rock star attitude. Like, not so many of them actually. They don't really
Yeah.
express it. They don't like.
I've have similar experiences. Going to Niven Bar in Oslo, and whenever Coffin Storm had their release party, uh, you know, um, Apollyon and Tormentor were DJing,
Wow. Okay.
and it was wild, dude. Because like it happened on one of the nights of Inferno Festival, but this wasn't part of the Inferno.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
was something completely, and I caught wind of this ahead of time, and I was like, dude, fuck Inferno Festival. I am going to this record release party. And I'm glad I did because I got to meet one of my heroes in Napoleon because I'm all about Aura Noir,
Same.
and and dude, he gave me a fucking signed CD copy along with Fenris's signature as well.
Oh, oh, that's a big one.
Dude, yeah, and dude, I was like, how fucking cool is this? And like he just, it was very nonchalant. He's like, oh yeah, I was like, I was gonna buy it. Like I was gonna buy the CD off of him. He's like, oh no, here you go, man. Just take it. Just buy me a beer, and I did. I bought him like 3 beers.
Yeah, it's too humble, man. It's so crazy how the Scandinavians or generally the North European people can be so humble to the point where it feels so unreal. You're not
Yeah.
very. I can't say you're feeling uncomfortable about it, but you do feel very very surprised by it, and
Yeah.
you don't want to abuse that. You want to, the least you can do is, of course, buy somebody a beer,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
of
It's the
course,
least I can
enjoy a
do.
good time. And I should probably tell you that, unfortunately, had we arrived a couple of days earlier than the day, of course, when we arrived in Stockholm, we could have met Thomas Eriksson and, of course, Fredrik Melander, the former bass player of Bathory, because
They were hanging out that week. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure if it was that week, but it was probably around the weekend because I remember we arrived in Tuesday. It might have been Monday when they were there, but I just remember it's like, come on, I could have met these guys as well. But the best part was, uh, experiencing the place itself, because I don't really go around at bars and cafes and whatnot, because a lot of the times you just see all the people that gossip, and
Yeah.
this you hear such stupid rumors, and like, I want to be like as far away from that as possible. I really want to distance myself from it. Back
I
there, it was so
okay.
different. It really felt like I was in a safe place. I was in a safe zone, and all the Swedes, they were very sweet, and I
Very.
and I imagine the Norwegians can be also very, you know, they can also be very, friendly towards you as well. And I mean, speaking of you meeting Apollyon, I mean, that's a big one because on stage, I always imagine being Apollyon when he plays bass and rips his vocals for Aura Noir, because he's a good role model in that sense. And I always wanted to see how he transcends that energy through the music. And I wish I was that guy, but you know what? I I hope I'll meet that guy someday, share beer, and of course talk about German thrash metal.
Yeah, it was great because, like, he was spitting records all night, and not only did I meet Apollyon, but I met his sister and his brother-in-law, and I got to talk to them, and like, she was, like, kinda, like, just unsolicitedly telling me, about their childhood in between
Yeah,
spinning records because people would approach him to talk about, whatever, and then, like, I had a moment where Apollyon and I were just going on and on about records that we grew up on, and it was so great. I didn't need to have a recording of it. It was like, dude, like that happened. I got to talk all night about Kiss, AC/DC, Accept, with Apollyon. It was great, and I could never replace that magic.
yeah.
you know?
When you record that in, like, in your head, when you have that memory,
Mhm.
it's much more important than a recording with your camera or over phone. That's one of the things I said when it comes to concerts. When you see it and when you experience it, that matters more than a recording with your telephone, because not
100%.
only are you not going to revisit the recording of it, even if you do, you might. But then again, you're revisiting the memory and the feeling that you had during that specific moment. I think the feeling of it is what matters the most, not so much the recording. I mean, I don't really look at all the previous concert recordings that I've done. I mean, they're very short and brief because I don't want to. My wife would, just do this, for a short period of time, but then she would like put out the like put the phone back in her bag and we just enjoy the show. Like that. That's
Yeah,
the things we
I'll
encourage.
do the same, because like, I've we again, with Napoleon playing live, at Beyond the Gates was a I got to see the whole Bathory tribute where he played, he played on stage along with Blasphemer, Eric from Watain, and many others. Even Frederic was on stage.
Yeah,
And I got a few clips with my phone just to like, capture some memories. And then the rest of the time I'm like just soaking it all in and
you
just
absorb
just
the whole thing.
absorbing that, that moment. It was just fucking tremendous.
Oh man, I wish I was there, but a friend of mine from Turin, Italy, he moved to Sweden like around the time when that was Beyond the Gates. If it was Beyond the Gates festival, right?
Right.
And he was there. I'm not sure if he was there on the whole festival, or just the last day of it. But
Uh-huh.
he did say, like, for somebody who, like me, also grew up listening to Bathory for so many years, that was something different. And
It
I
Yeah.
imagine everybody's saying the same thing. Even when I interviewed Gal about it, about the whole experience, that goes back to one of the questions that you asked before, like one of the injuries that I really had to work on. That was also a pretty big shocker for me. When I asked him about it, he was also like, he also remembers that as a very, it's a very good positive experience because he said this is basically like the updated 20 years version of that tribute to Quarthan that they did all the way back in 2004 when the man himself passed away. And
Yeah.
I've
Remember that.
actually visited his grave in a it's a graveyard outside of Stockholm. It's I think the full name is Skogskyrko Garden, which is like forest church garden, something like that. And before I even I just wanted there to, give tribute to the man himself, I brought some of the CDs of my former black metal band, like test pressings. Way before we even got through the gates of that garden, I already started soaking in tears. We were trying to find his resting place. When we found it, I remember just I started crying, man. For real, I started crying. If you can look at the picture itself, you can see that very sad look of somebody who has been a longtime fan. And, it didn't feel like, you have people come up to his graveyard and they take pictures and they all have very, you know, happy to kind of bittersweet types of, facial expressions.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like that. I was so sad because it was 20 years since the man himself passed away, and it was 7 years since his father had passed away too. And I saw this 666 necklace there, in a couple of Swedish kronas, like in coins, and of course this very sweet rock there that says "Tack för allt, Korton och Boss," which means thank for all, Korton and Boss. And it's like a family resting place. And I remember placing my CD there. And the reason why I took a picture was simply because you know I wanted to have that as a memory, but also to post it and just like as a sign of paying tribute to the man himself. I thought we could all in some form or another unite about this whole tragedy of a man who was one of the forefathers of black metal, and of course Viking metal himself. And I just remember I was so teared up. And
Yeah.
afterwards, we found the giant cross of Entombed
Where
Left Hand.
Entombed, yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, when I saw it there, I was like, wow. Oh, that's my wife coming back. That's my dog barking right just to alert me. He's like a freaking
What's his
alarm.
name?
Simba is like the
Simba.
white. It's like the lion from the Lion
Lion
King,
King.
but
Yeah.
he's white because he's a Maltese. So I should have called him Kimba because there is also Kimba, the white lion. But no. But anyways, yeah. When we saw the giant cross, I remember like looking up. And it's like, whoa, that's cool. And the funny thing is like, just to imagine like what that place represents. For some people it is like a very holy ground.
Right.
For us
Yeah.
extreme metal fans, it's a different kind of meaning of the word holy ground.
Yeah. That talk about loss, man. When LG, whenever he passed away, that one hit me hard
Oh yeah.
because Entombed, like I found out about death metal because of Entombed first, and you would think that I would have heard, like being an American, I would have heard things like Deicide or Death even. I mean, I heard about all those bands. Don't get me wrong, but Entombed like just sucked me in.
Yeah.
You know, like because they had it was they're technical, but I just felt like it was easier for me to digest for some reason. Maybe because I saw first like I saw the Wolverine Blues album and I went backwards, and like Left Hand Path, dude, and I just that's another record that I hold and like
It's such a
I
hard
can't say
drug. Yeah.
and like dude whenever he passed like some of the last like footage of LG struggling with the cancer and he was on social media with someone you could see how sad he was and like just how brokenhearted that he knew that he was on his way out. I had no doubt.
Yeah.
And and like and I'm just there was a big part of me that was I'm glad that his suffering was over and done and he's in no more pain. But in the same merit, I was like, dude, fuck, like what a goddamn loss that was.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see Entombed AD perform. They actually did perform in my hometown at the Exit Festival, the Explosive Stage. But I remember one of the worst parts about that festival is when you have one metal act at the Explosive Stage and another metal act,
Yeah.
happening in a bigger
At the same
stage.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and who would have thought back then? I was stupid. I didn't even know 2 years afterwards that the man himself would pass away from cancer at such
Yeah.
a young age. Such.
Very young.
Yeah,
Very
I
young.
don't think he was even 50.
Yeah.
I mean, it was terrible, and sadly, I didn't even found his resting place. I think his mother, who is actually Macedonian, uh,
Yeah.
I think they're both of their resting place, and but I wish, I found that as well, and of course pay tribute to that, and he really was like he not only was he such a unique vocalist, but he was a very you know intense performer on stage. When you see some people perform death metal, there are a lot of people who do it like when they're performing. They seems more like they do it for the show. That guy was like living not just 100% of himself, but 110 and above.
Oh
He
yes.
he is like I know that we also have this whole uh, Swedish Swedish death metal branch with all the other bands like Dismember. We still have a
Mhm.
Dismember.
Mhm.
Even Grave got back together with Jürgen Sandström, the original vocalist and bassist, and we also have we have Unleashed, but it feels empty without.
Entomb.
LG, yeah, and it feels
Yeah.
empty without Entombed. And speaking of Left Hand Path, I remember it was 9 years ago when I first discovered that. That was when I was starting to get into death metal. That's when I was watching a lot of old school horror movies, and I remember watching Phantasm by Don Coscarelli from 1979. That's a classic. And I
Mhm.
still hold that movie in high regards. Yes, it might be cheesy for today's standards, but I love the movie and I
Oh,
love
yeah.
the main theme. And the best part about that movie is how some bands reference the main theme. You have Tormentor, Attila of Mayhem, his old band Tormentor, for the opening of Anno Domini. They covered the main theme of Phantasm. And then you have Left Hand Path, the title track itself, play out in this whole awesome, like very death ripping action. And then all of a sudden is the Phantasm main theme, the outro itself.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how they pull it off. It's like you have this very dark, very intense, like death metal that you can only see with bands like Carnage and Entombed and Dismember and whatnot. And then the outro itself, it's like,
The
well, it's
the
just the first track. It's weird.
that solo on Left Hand Path
Yeah,
gets me every single time.
yeah,
Like, if it's on shuffle in my car, like, I dude, sometimes I'll play it, like, twice, maybe 3 times in a row, depending on where I'm going, and, dude, I can't get over Alex's fucking lead work on that
yeah.
track. It's just amazing.
And the best part about that whole like final section of Left Hand Path, when you listen to that song, you're basically standing in silence, and you're just like you're you're entranced, and this is the facial expression that you're going through. It's like a very important scene of a character development where somebody's like,
Uh-huh.
it's like complete silence, but then that's the soundtrack of the moment.
Yeah, yeah, this song has its own story arc. Like, y y
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, "Dude, what?" I guess me every time. Dude, like, okay, so speaking of albums, uh, I need to know what 6 albums that are very important to you. God forbid your house is burning down, and you gotta take 6 albums with you. Which ones you taking?
uh Tough to name, but I'll definitely say that I'll take Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. I'll take that one. I'll definitely take Rainbow Rising as well, but I would also love to take Bathory, Blood, Fire, Death. It's my favorite, actually. I do love the first three, but that one is still like the peak.
Yeah.
Uh, so
I'm a
that's
return man
three.
myself.
Oh, the to return, yeah, you can't go wrong. And so that's three. Uh, if I should take three more, I would take. I would definitely take the Somberlane by Dissection. Like I said,
Oh,
it's an important album. So that's four crucial albums there already. Uh, Candlemass, Epicus, Dimicus, Metallicus, the first album, the album that actually changed and saved my life at the same time. During the most challenging of times. God forbid I lost that album because my wife and I adored that album as well as Nightfall, but I think I enjoy Epicus, Dimicus, Metallicus even more. So, five albums right now. If I should name one more album, well, that would be difficult, but I would definitely say, I would definitely say if I had Injustice for All by Metallica. That's my favorite album by Metallica.
yeah.
I would still take
That's
that one.
I think, dude, like, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, but, like, one of my best friends I grew up with in my hometown, he had MTV, and I was 8 years old when that album came out. I was definitely 8 years old whenever I saw the video for One,
Oh,
and that's the album that really solidified that, okay, I'm a metalhead now.
yeah,
Like, there's no coming back from it. Like, that yeah, sure, I'll dabble in some non-metal genres from time to time, but it always comes back to that,
yeah.
that Metallica's one, dude, is that was the heaviest shit I heard as an 8-year-old.
Indeed, I was also like when I first heard the track one, that was actually my introduction to Metallica as well. I think I was also 8, 9 or 10 years old when I first heard it. And, I think what I love about the album itself is the intensity and the emotions. And of course, the songwriting itself. There's so many things what I love about early Metallica releases, especially that one. But I would have named maybe some other album, besides it, because there's like too many great albums that I could, browse through my musical database in my head. But I will never, ever leave out Injustice for All, simply because being a teenager and listening to that album on your headphones with your, like, what is it, like MP3 player or on your iPhone and whatnot, it was magical. And had it not been for that album, maybe maybe I would have been a different person. Not
Mhm.
sure if I would be a better person, although, but I still think everybody needs a bit of that in their lives, a bit of Metallica in their lives. It,
At least the first 4 albums, that's for sure.
Yeah, the first four albums always, because you know, had it not been for those first four albums, you can
Yeah,
see them mainstream as much as you want, but take those out of the equation, and all the best albums that you enjoyed after those albums came out, they
yeah.
don't exist.
Yeah, a
None
lot of because,
exist.
I mean, even Ted from Dark Throne said how important Ride the Lightning is in an interview I heard, It's just goes to show you just, like, how important those albums were to the movement of black metal and so forth.
Yeah,
So, there you go. Vladimir, this was by far one of the most intriguing and interesting interviews I've ever had, and I knew it was gonna be because you, like myself, know about all the good shit, all the interesting shit, that the metal underground has to offer. Thank you so much, my friend, for everything. I really appreciate it, and, we gotta do it again sometime.
I agree. I mean, thank you so much for having me. Discussing all these subjects with somebody who shares the same level of musical enthusiasm, and of course having that same level of optimism as I did when I interviewed musicians. It really feels like you find so many similar people in this world, which are pretty rare. But
Yeah,
the this whole conversation means a lot to me, and you know thank you so
likewise.
much for having me. And I truly do hope we will do this in the near future again. And all I could say is, for all the friends and the fans listening, I urge them to follow Tales of the Rift podcast. I've already told some of my friends to follow as well, especially the ones that dig Acid Bath. And I told them, follow this podcast simply because I believe what you do is great, and I believe in the future of your podcast.
Oh,
And
that means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome, man. And keep up the great work. And I will always be, every time you drop a new episode, I'm there. At work, at home, I'm listening.
Thank you so much. Vlad, you man, your work is amazing. I highly encourage all of my metal friends and metal enthusiasts, if you're into reading some really thought-provoking, interesting interviews with the who's who of metal, you can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Metal Byte website. I'm definitely going to post all of that in this episode's caption. My friend, I hope to see you one day at a festival or concert. Um, my man Vladimir, thank you so much, brother.
Thank you so much, man. I hope we'll
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I said, we're gonna do another one of these. We got to. We got to. We got invited. You too, brother. Take a good one.